Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So, since Mutant Mayhem has came out, I am going to rank all of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. Now, just warn you guys, this ranking could easily change. I love all these movies so much, and depending on my mood, I could have one above, one below. Like, anytime you ask me, I could probably point out what ones I could easily swap. Like, that's just the way it is. But yeah, so I'm excited to do it, so let's get into it. So number 10 for me is Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie. Now, I was excited to watch this when it came out on Netflix. I saw the trailer and I was like, oh my god. And like, the action looks great. I was excited that they're finally bringing in Casey Jones into this movie. I was like, yes. And I was excited that we're getting a new version of Krang after Out of the Shadows. And all that. So I was super excited. And I watched it and I'm like, the first time I watched it, I was like, this is actually really, really good, but not as good as the other Turtles movies. And then the more I watch it, I'm like, I don't want to rewatch this ever again. This is the only film out of the Ninja Turtles series that I probably won't watch again unless I'm doing a marathon of all the Turtles movies. Because this movie, like, this is based on the show, so I don't necessarily want to knock the show because I know that there are people that are probably fans of the show. But I think that there's something about the design of the Turtles that kind of throw me off, because it's like you're half doing the Bay Turtles and then you're also doing the old Turtles type thing, but also like you need to add superpowers to the Turtles' weapons, which, like, the reason why I like the Turtles is because that, like, I can accept extending bow stuff in the Bay movies for Donnie, but other than that, they're pretty normal about their weapons. So I mean, I like the Turtles because they're not like Superman or something where it's like they need to use superpowers to get rid of the bad guys. They're the only thing that makes them look like superheroes is because that they look different and they wear masks and have weapons. That's it. But this movie, and the series as well, like, this is not just a knock against the movie, like, takes that coolness aspect and goes like, what if we just swap their wooden weapons with the mystical cool weapons? And it's just like, why do we need that? But yeah, it's just ridiculous. So that's why I have Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at number 10. Now, number 9 for me is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. Now, I really do like this movie. This is leagues better than Rise. But when you think about this movie, it's like it took away some of the darkness of the first movie, and it went completely to the 1987 Turtles cartoon. Even to the point where they had to bring 2 new mutants, and except for Bebop and Rocksteady, they are Toko and Raza. Which is like, why? But, and also, one of my favourite bits, you have Vanilla Ice doing Ninja Rap at the end of this movie. You have one of the coolest looking villains in Super Shredder by the end of this movie. That is kind of wasted because he's kind of crumbled and the Turtles don't fight him at all. And also, they don't use their weapons, so that's kind of like a, really? And then also you have things like, you also have a new actress that plays April, which I really do like. And I think that there's a lot of cool things in this movie, like the whole thing of like the TGRI background of how the Turtles were created. I thought that was pretty interesting. And I loved how they were all like mistakes, basically, and how that was explored in this movie, and how all three of the Ninja Turtles movies, whether you like them or not, they all take different Turtles as the focus. The first movie is Raph. The second movie it goes a little bit with Raph, but he's not really the main focus. Donnie's the main focus with the whole thing about the Ooze and his whole existential crisis. But in the third movie, it's about Michelangelo, which we'll get to in a second. But I think that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Secret of the Ooze is not the worst Ninja Turtles movie, but the weakest. The original trilogy. Even though I could easily flip-flop this and Turtles 1 pretty instantly, even though that I do like it a little bit more. So number 8 for me is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990. The reason why I have it here is because that even if you don't like this movie, you gotta respect it that if these movies flopped, well, I mean the third one did flop, but if this movie didn't exist, we wouldn't have the Bay movies, we wouldn't have Mutant Mayhem, we wouldn't have TMNT, we wouldn't have any Ninja Turtles movies. They would only exist in comics, toys, and comics, toys, and cartoons. That's all. But Ninja Turtles 1 is so cool. What Jim Henson did with the costumes is incredible, and I'm a big Jim Henson fan. I'm a big fan of the Muppets. I'm a big fan of Ben the Big Blue House. I like the dinosaur show that he made. And I think that what he did with the Turtles was next level. And I was like, oh my god, this is like what we didn't really expect to get out of a Turtles movie in 1990. And I think that there's like, it's so cool that we have a Ninja Turtles movie that is grounded, realistic, they're not super powered, they're the plain Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that we know. And it's a perfect blend of the comics, which is the dark and gritty take, and the cartoon, which is the little more silly, goofy take. I love how they kind of blended that and did that, because that is so cool that this movie is what is. With practical effects and no CGI, and the stunt work is unbelievable, and the puppetry is so good, and I really like Elias Koteas as Casey Jones in this movie. I like Judith Hoag as April. I really like how those two in particular are just like, they're so good, and the references are a little bit obscure for a children's audience, but the children will love it because it's the Turtles and they're boy kicking butt, and you get to see the brotherly banter, and the adults will sit down and watch it. Depending if you're into practical effects, you'll like this movie. If you like the references that they do, you'll like it for that reason. It's just the perfect blend of the original comic and the original cartoon. It's just so good. The number 7 for me is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. Yes, the trilogy is down the bottom for me because I grasp a little bit more towards the animated movies and the modern kind of takes on the Turtles. But the reason why I have Ninja Turtles 3 above anything else, this is a bit of a controversial one, because normally people would have this at number 10 or 9. Right. So, but Ninja Turtles 3 takes some risk that we never, like, if Ninja Turtles 3 didn't do what it did, we would get the same old Turtles in New York getting some sort of bad guy in the city. But they wanted to change it up. They wanted to go, okay, let's take the Turtles to feudal Japan. Let's have the adventure there. Let's do that. Then that would be so much more interesting than having yet the third movie in the city. Which I really like that. And even though the villains are kind of lame, the storyline that they do in that movie is really, really, really good. And I love how they give Michelangelo a storyline that is not comic relief. He has the storyline with Mitsu, and then he, and how he wants to stay in feudal Japan because of Mitsu and that sort of stuff. Even though they probably could have done it, but like Mikey has his funny funny bits in the movie, but he gets humanized a lot more, and even Raph gets humanized with the little kid Yoshi, and humanizing Raph a little more was just so good. And I love how Ninja Turtles 3 did stuff that the other two movies didn't bother to do. Um, the only one thing is that I don't like about this movie that I like about the other two is the costumes. The costumes in Turtles 3 are terrible. The turtles look like frogs and Splinter looks like a dog. It's 100% true. I mean, if you like this movie because of the turtles, because of the costumes, I will not give you that. If you like it because what they were trying to do with the script and the storylines that they were trying to attempt, I will go like, yes, I agree with you. That is the best one of the original trilogy because they kind of use the like John Dupre's music. I forgot to mention the music, but the music in the first two movies is so good. They're kind of similar in music. This one, John Dupre goes full Feel Japan style music with the bongos and that sort of stuff. And it's so cool how he uses the music in Turtles 3. So that's why I have it at number 7. Number 6 for me is TMNT, the 2007 anime movie, which just takes in the same universe as the original trilogy. I really like this movie. I grew up on this movie. We had this thing called a T-Box, and we recorded a bit of it on that. And my cousin was big into this movie, so we would watch it over there. I like how this movie takes place years after Turtles 3, and basically, just basically picks up the Turtles when they're older, and they need to come back together and fight the monster. And I just think it's so cool that we get to see that. And it's cool that that is what we see in TMNT. Even though that is a little silly that they get new monsters and stuff. But that's the only thing that I can kind of see where it's like, it's kind of weak in that regard, but it's great with what they do with the Turtles and even April and Splinter and that sort of stuff. Like, it's a pretty mature story. It's so good, and I love that movie. I think it's so good. And now number 5 for me is Turtles Forever, the gigantic crossover that ended the 2003 series with the 2003 series remaining the 1987 Turtles. It's so good. I love... Like, this movie came up before Multiverse of Madness, before The Flash and that sort of stuff. So before really anything was doing multiverse. This Turtles Forever did in a way that was so special. And I love how that they used, like, the Turtles to kind of mature the 1987 Turtles. Even though that they kind of completely ignore it when they next show up in Transdimensional Turtles, the 2012 series. But I think that this movie is really good. We get, like, all the old villains team up with the new villains. We get even cameos from Tokka and Razor when they're getting both mutated, and also when they're beating up the side of the turtle van when the Turtles come back in the 1987 series Blimp and Turtle Van with the 2003 Turtles in. I think it's so cool. And I like the whole thing of the Technodrome and Neutron Shredder and how they redesigned the Technodrome to make it fit the 2003 series. I think it's so cool. I love that. I think that this is probably one of the few movies I would put at the top of multiverse stories, or multiverse movies, right? Not necessarily time travel, but multiverse, right? But I just love that. I think it's so cool that we have a movie that's a crossover event between the Turtles, and this wants me to see a Turtles Forever 2, whether if you do focus on the comic Turtles or you focus on the Bay Turtles, just the main Turtles, whatever. You do that, and then they go... And then you basically either do what this movie did or whatever. Do something for another Turtles Forever, because we need more of these. and I think it's so good. Now, number 4 for me, yes, of course, is the new movie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem. I bloody loves this movie. I think that this movie is so good. I think that I went in with kind of low expectations. I was like, oh, really? We need to kind of see, like, do we need to see the Turtles in, like, the Into the Spider-Verse animation? Because I like Into the Spider-Verse, but it's like, I don't want that to be the animation style for everything now, because if Spider-Verse spawns the animation and Turtles has taken it, this is the animation that is going to happen with everything they'll like that has an anime property. That's going to be the main animation style. Which, yes, it does have Into the Spider-Verse kind of feel, but there are times when it does do its own thing, and I love it for that. I think that it was really good hearing teenagers come out of the Turtles' mouth. I loved the characters of Jackie Chan as Splinter and Paul Rudd as Wonder Gecko, and I love the new characters of Ray Fillet and Genghis Frog and that sort of stuff, and I loved Superfly as the villain, and I think that there was a lot of things that made me nervous. I've seen the trailers and that sort of stuff and gone like, am I really going to grab towards this movie? Because this movie looks good, but they're a bit too kiddish for me and that sort of stuff. But it was so cool seeing this movie work as well as it did, and I also loved of seeing what they were trying to do with the other shows, of like the humans not accepting them and that sort of stuff, and how that ties into the main story of this movie, where it was the main story of Out of the Shadows, but they kind of put that in the back part of Out of the Shadows. And I also obviously love seeing Bebop and Rocksteady again. Because of this movie, I am excited to get the video game and the Paramount Plus series and the sequel, the video game and the series, right? So I'm excited to see what they do with this. I'm so excited for it. I cannot wait to see what they do with the Mutant Mayhem universe, right? So number 3 for me is Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, as you guys know, I'm a big Batman fan. I'm a big Turtles fan. So seeing this movie was so cool, and I actually read the comics before I saw this movie. So this was pretty much a straight adaptation out of the comics, and I love it for that. I do think that the Turtles designs are good. I do think Donnie's is a bit weird with like the oval egg kind of head, but it's so cool seeing interactions between Batgirl and Donatello and Raph and Batman and Mikey and Alfred and that sort of stuff. It was so cool, and sorry, but seeing that, it's like, wow, they've did a great job with this. And even though that you can argue that's a bit more of a Batman story, because obviously you have the 4 characters with Alfred, Batman, Batgirl, and Robin. You also mainly get the Batman villains, like Shredder teams up with Ra's al Ghul, and Ra's al Ghul gives the mutant to like Shredder, and he becomes like a cobra snake, and Mr. Freeze becomes a polar bear, which makes sense, and then Harley becomes like a wolf, dog kind of character, and that sort of stuff. And when you see the transformations, it's horrifying in that movie, but also it's interesting, and also seeing the whole thing of, in that movie, how they had to take down Batman because Batman has now become like a literal giant bat that they need to take down. It was so cool, and it's just so cool. I love Batman vs. Ninja Turtles. I think that it's one of the best Batman movies. I think it's one of the best Turtles movies we've ever got. But yeah, I love that so much. Just warning you guys, these next 2 movies are kind of tied for me, because they're even though that Batman vs. Ninja Turtles and these other 2 movies I have at the top are 5 stars, there are 2 movies that I flip-flop a lot depending on my mood. So, number 2 for me is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Out of the Shadows. Now, this movie partly becomes the main reason I have it at the top is maybe because of what got me into the Turtles, and also because of my theater experience. I went to this movie with my friends, and I showed my friend Luke the first Turtles movie before we saw this one, because he didn't see the first one. So I showed him that, and we all watched it. I guess I was very excited to see this one because I was bored by the first one a little bit, but I really like both. And it's one of those things where it's like, so we went in, we watched it, we saw my brother, because he was with his mate. Then I had my brother's mate's brother at my house for my party. I can't remember if it was a birthday party or we just wanted to see Turtles. I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, and then watching this movie, it was so cool seeing this movie in the theater. And I think that this movie course corrected for the better. This movie kind of leads more into the 1987 series, which is kind of a good thing, because I'm now disappointed that we're not going to see the third version of this trilogy, because we actually do get to see Bebop and Rocksteady. We actually get to see Shredder be Shredder and not a robot. We get to see Krang for the first time. We get to see our new Casey Jones, even though that it might be the worst version of Casey Jones. I actually don't mind the version of Casey Jones of what they were going for, right? And I also still really like Megan Fox's April. I think that she is one of the best Aprils we've gotten. I think that there's some really cool things in Out of the Shadows that people don't appreciate because they didn't like the first one, and they didn't see this one because of how much they didn't like the first one. So I really like Out of the Shadows. I think it's a fun time. I don't think it's I think that there are flaws in it, like the story's not as good, but I think that there's a lot more in this movie to like than people give credit for. So number one for me is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2014. So this is a bit controversial because I flip-flop between this and Out of the Shadows a lot of how much of what one I prefer, right? The reason why I had this one here is because that I remember Ninja Turtles 2014 was my first rated M movie I saw in the theatre, and I was at Yamba. So, because my family used to go to Yamba every Christmas and every Easter, and it would have been around the time it would have been Easter, because I don't know if it came out August here or a little after that, but we were in Yamba when we saw it, and I loved seeing the 2014 Turtles in that theatre, because I think that 2014 has a lot of things that people need to look past, and I think that there are a lot of things in this movie that they get a lot right. Like, they get the personality of the Turtles right, and it's probably the best version of the personalities that they've been. I think that there's a lot of things to like. There's a lot of jokes in that. There's a lot of cool shots that you can see out of the comics. They're based on the comics and stuff. I think that the fight scenes are some of the best fight scenes we've gotten. Like, the sewer fight is so good. Like, having all the Turtles, and Splinter fighting Shredder and stuff. That was so cool to see. And having the snow chase fight was so cool. And I love that snow chase fight. It's one of the best Ninja Turtles fights I've ever seen. Even though that I like the final battle with Shredder, it is a bit like the 1999 movie where it's like they need to defeat Shredder on the roof. But I do like that. I think that there's a lot of cool things that are pretty good about this movie. Even though that's a little silly that Shredder's like a transformer, and obviously like Splinter is too realistic. But I think that they had to make it realistic and I mean, you've put on the 1990 movie, I could tell that those are rubber suits, but in the 2014, 2016 ones, it got me believing for a long time that the Turtles are real, because they actually looked gross. Not I mean, I loved the way that they're designed. I didn't think that they were gross, but they looked realistic. They looked like something that we would be afraid of. I love the Mutations. I think the Mutations is the best version of the Turtles that we've ever got, with both Out of the Shadows and 2014. So, guys, that is my ranking of the theatrically and even direct-to-video releases of the Ninja Turtles movies. I probably will do a ranking at some point, even though that will probably be the same, with like Operation Blue Line and getting out of the town and coming out of their shells and that sort of stuff in there as well. But yeah, so guys, please hit the like button down below if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe, also hit the little bell icon and get notified of future videos that I'll make. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye.
Hey there. Subscribe to my channel. And also press this bell icon.